first of all, thanks to you. Thanks for this opportunity for Agile Spain to have this little conversation, because our community is really, really interested to ask some questions. So thanks for your time.
You are welcome. I remember my time at the CAS conference a few years ago, and I have to say it is one of the warmest memories I have of any conference I've spoken at anywhere, and there's a lot of them. So I really appreciate the Agile Spain community.
Great. Thank you for your words. So as we exchanged some days before, our community have some questions because they want to have more information about how our experts or reference in Agile are seeing the future and how Agile is going to evolve. So we summarize and we have some more questions that we would like to ask you. So if you're ready, we can start.
Let's do it. Let's dive in.
Yeah.
Let's explore them together.
Great. So the first question is, what do you think is the most important factor in changing a company's culture towards an Agile mindset?
I'm going to tell you a factor that's not a cultural factor that I think is the most important thing, which is the question, why? Yeah. Why does the organization need more agility? Now, notice that's a different question than want. I think a lot of organizations, especially now, we're seeing a regression in their willingness to try new things. And I think it's a response to the turbulent and uncertain times we're in. So the question we can hold as Agilists is like, why does a company need agility? And what parts of it does it need? And then let that business need be the lead for the cultural changes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's more focus on why, not in what.
Yeah, the what's are going to follow. The needed cultural changes are going to follow. We know that any agile practice or framework that we try to implement, even at a surface level, will create a lot of shifts for people. It will create a lot of need for people to challenge their beliefs, challenge the way they see the world. So we know that that's going to come along for the ride. Yeah. So this is just one approach, but it's the one that I think is appropriate now because I see a lot of organizations in a very fear-based position at this moment.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, totally agree with you. Okay, so we are going to change the question, and we are going to explore what about how scale Agile practice. So regarding that, what do you consider critical for success when it comes to scale Agile practice beyond individual teams at the organization level?
I'm pretty agnostic to scaling frameworks themselves. I think they all can work. I think the thing that all of those frameworks authors say is the one thing most organizations don't do. And so here is my advice, jumping on their same bandwagon to say the exact same thing, which is descale the work first. Descale the work first. If an organization's products, if an organization's processes are so intertwined and bound up inside of each other, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do to try to scale agility. You're just going to create more tension and more gridlock between those pieces that are already so intertwined. And many organizations are in that situation. It's a inheritance from decades long decisions about how we build products and how we build organizations that don't fit the natural world anymore. So we actually have to descale that work. We have to take out those intricate interconnections, find out what really can stand on its own, find out what can really innovate on its own, and also make sure the products can actually iterate. If the products cannot iterate and deliver frequently, then that's the most important thing to take care of before we start scaling.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for your answer. I also totally agree with you. I think that one of the most important things is the focus on individuals, teams, or how can they create value for the company. So great. And after that, all this, what you say, how they can join and create together.
Yeah. It creates the need for people who know more about organization development than Agilists do.
Yeah.
And that's where I've been focusing my own efforts. I've been learning by being a member of an organization. It's a worldwide collaboratory called Greater Than, and these people are sort of adjacent to the Agile world, but they're not Agilists. They are experts in self-organization at scale. So I realized that just knowing the Agile frameworks, even the scaling frameworks for myself, wasn't enough. I had to become more of an organizational development consultant in these new ways of working. And so I'm in the middle of, I guess, scaling myself up in a certain way or expanding my capabilities to be more of a match for what we need now.
Great. Thank you for your point of view. Really interesting for me to hear that. So another topic that we would like to exchange with you is more regarding leadership in Agile. You know that leadership and Agile are quite near, so it's necessary how our leader the organization. So our community have the interest to know, in your point of view, how would you define good leadership within the Agile framework?
Leadership is explicitly not defined in the Agile framework. So herein lies our need to reach out to other allied disciplines and philosophies and schools of thought. And I think you see that a lot in the offerings that are part of the Agile world, like the leadership tracks in the IC Agile basket of learning, the certified Agile leadership offers from Scrum Alliance. And I think those are really useful. Where I've been focusing my efforts is on regenerative leadership, because I don't think it is enough to simply work inside the old capitalistic machine to just pump out more things faster. I think that what is needed is a complete rethinking of how can we join with humans in nature instead of humans over nature. Because I think we're finding out that we're running into some pretty horrific consequences from thinking that humans can dominate nature. And so what I'm talking about is something fairly advanced, this idea of regenerative leadership, or leadership based on thrivability for all, not only the organization, but all the organizations it impacts. And I believe we are headed toward a time where these ideas are going to become common sense, because very soon we're going to start to feel the horrible effects of what we've created on our planet, you know. And so very soon leaders are going to be looking for something not just that matches agility, but that goes beyond it, that goes in. It rhymes with agility, it still works with agility, but it's not the question of, you know, what do leaders need to do or be inside of agility. It's a bigger question that I think we are up for, and that the world will be up for pretty soon.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important aspects of the humans, and for the Agile coaches or Scrum Masters, how our leaderships and how they lead their teams. It's quite interesting what you mentioned.
Yeah, and I think that's an important piece, Ruben. We have to remember that we Agilists are the leaders of the future. We are. So like the more we develop ourselves and the more we don't participate with systems that don't work anymore, the more we're going to be able to do some really useful and helpful things as the world gets a little more unstable. Yeah,
you're right. I agree. Another question, also it's regarding how do you see the future in Agile in our existing world? Also, there is a trend, at least in Spain, maybe also in other countries, that Agile is going to death, and there are some authors or people that are speaking about that because they don't have a good experience with Agile, and they don't think that in the future Agile is going to use or to be the vehicle or the framework or the mindset correct to develop software or to develop products. And what is your vision about this future and this topic that we are having right now in our community, that Agile is dead, no?
Well, I think the poor implementations of Agile are dead. I think people are tired of that. I think organizations have not gotten the results that they want from Agile. Now, not necessarily the fault of any one group, not necessarily the fault of Agilists. I think organizational leaders can point to themselves as well, but most of them don't.
Yeah.
Most of them just say, hey, Agile didn't work. Let's move on to the next thing. I think a couple things about this. Number one, whatever skills we Agilists have gained in working this way are still going to be useful for the future. So it really doesn't matter what your job title is or what kind of role you're in. Being an Agilist in your heart and in the way you work is going to be useful, because Agile is the best known thing we have for addressing the complex world as it actually is without trying to dumb down that complexity, but also not be overwhelmed by that complexity. So we Agilists know how to make progress, even when things are completely uncertain and changeable and changing all the time. And things are changing all the time, and it's going to become more and more like that as we go on. So I don't know. Are we going to reinvent this under another name? Possibly. I'm also aware that several thought leaders in the Agile world have a movement called Reimagine Agile going on right now. That's all fine with me. When you get right down to it, the changes people are going to have to make are more foundational. They're more fundamental than a framework or a process. And it's basically learning how to work with uncertainty, unwanted changes, and still make progress and keep yourself in good shape. Keep your nervous system in good shape. Keep your mind in good shape. Those are the fundamental changes I think we're all in for.
Great, great. Maybe in the future, as you say, it's not going to call Agile. It's another brand, but the most important, as you mentioned, is the purpose, no? What is our purpose? What are
Why are we doing it? What are we trying to get out of it? And I think if we stop thinking about Agile or agility as a framework or a set of frameworks, and we start thinking about this idea that maybe Agile is a brilliant emergent response to complexity. Maybe Agile has arrived to help us with the complexity we're living in, and that we're finally able to let in. Because guess what? The world has always been this complex. But our reductionist, scientific method, industrialized era ways of working with things made it seem simpler. It made the world seem simpler, and it's not. But agility allows us to work with the world as it is.
You mentioned the complexity, and also we have another question that connects with that idea that you mentioned. Is what are the challenges for an agile coach in a complex system who companies and people living in constant change? So we are in constant change. All the agile coaches are in different products or in different projects, and they are working with organizations that are systems that are really complex. What do you think, in your point of view, that are the challenges that we will have in the future?
I think that the challenges are already here. We don't have to wait for the future to experience them. And there are many of them. But the one that I'm thinking about now is the one I'm feeling in my own practice. I'm working with a leadership team of an organization that uses Agile frameworks, that really does have Agile at its heart. This is an organization that is truly committed to self-organization, and it's truly committed to distributed leadership, distributed decision-making, distributed power, all of that. So beyond agility. And yet still, the same challenge is to make ourselves use the structures of Agile to keep ourselves honest when things change. And what I mean by that is that I can feel in the work I'm doing with this leadership team. So we use some basic sort of Kanban structures to keep ourselves honest to what we said we were going to accomplish as a team for like a 2-week period. And because so much change is happening in that organization, I find that it doesn't take very long before we stop looking at the Kanban board. It doesn't take very long before we take our attention to the fire drill or the emergency of the day, and then we don't come back and say, okay, because we did this, these other things didn't happen. So that happens at an organizational scale too. So I think the biggest challenge in that case is Agile coaches really taking a stand for how useful it is for agility to create transparency and accountability and being honest about what's actually happening in the organization.
Right. Good values. Really, really interesting. So we are going to final the conversation, but we will have another question. You are in the Agile for many years. What is your point of view about the evolve since you start in Agile? As Agile coach or as a mentor or as a trainer, what is the evolution that you are living since many years? I don't know how many years you practice in
A
Agile.
lot, almost 20 years working in an Agile way. Yeah. Well, I think the biggest evolution is that the things that we were trying to bring into the Agile world, let's say 15 years ago, are now here.
Mhm.
And we're on to new challenges. So one evolution has been the idea that coaching and facilitation skills are actually important and useful and necessary for people to move into these new ways of working. Because we learned early on that it's not as simple as just installing new practices. As soon as we do that, it brings up identity crises for many people. It brings up psychological blocks. It brings up, internal limitations. And so we need ways for individuals and groups to break through those limitations. So, I can look back in this period of time and say, okay, we have done a net good for the world by being able to bring in those types of things alongside the processes. Because prior to that, I was around, I've been around a lot longer than just my turn in agility. Because prior to that, we tried all kinds of other interesting things like total quality management, like lean, like house of quality. Like all of these things were so useful and fell flat. They didn't work. They didn't last very long because they were requiring mindset changes that the world wasn't ready for yet. But we Agilists somehow got a little crack of light. And we came through that little crack of light to help the business world embrace more of what people would call soft skills, which I would say are actually the hard things. So I want to before we've talked a lot about the future already. I want to appreciate where we've come from. And I want to appreciate the strides we've made and the gains we have realized. I don't think we do that enough. I don't think we acknowledge ourselves enough for the positive impact we've had on business and on the world.
Well, great. Thank you for your answer. I also agree with you on this topic. It's really interesting to hear you, to listen to you, and what is your perspective about how Agile evolved since you leave or since you start, and what is the future that you are seeing right now? Because as you mentioned before, the future is not in some years, it's right now. We are in the future, and we are building the future, as you say. So thank you for your time. It's a pleasure for Agile Spain to have this opportunity, and for Agile community in Spain to have this opportunity to exchange with you. It's also a pleasure personally to have the opportunity to speak with you. So thank you so much. We wait for you in Spain, maybe in some years.
I hope so. I have a retreat space in Portugal now with my daughter. She lives there and she runs the retreat space for small workshops, retreats, that sort of thing. So I'm in Portugal a lot these days. I'm just next door.
Great. We are neighbors.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time. So